Hello again, it's your old friend Theta, the monotone messiah. It's been a while since I've done a Q&A video, and today I'd like to rectify that. My life has been pretty hectic over the last few weeks, but I do want you all to get your questions answered if possible. As such, today I'm going to play catch up to some degree and answer some more questions than usual. The approach here is going to be a little less formal, so hopefully you enjoy this less scripted version of my answers. Anyway, let's roll some footage and dig right in. Coney Games asks, how do you find good/fun lobbies? First, I'll say I'm a little biased here because I have the Kool-Aid crew to lean on. This is a group of people from my Discord that I play with regularly. It's fairly large and growing all the time, so if you'd like to play with me and the rest of the crew, I highly recommend it. It's a great group of people, and you can come join it by going to invite.gg/ThetaVR. Anyway, if I take the perspective of somebody who doesn't have the benefit of the Kool-Aid crew, then I just go through a few different heuristics and work from there. Number one is I just look for familiar names, so this could be good or bad attached to that. I'm looking mostly for league players who I know have the skill and interest in winning that I want to compete against, even if it's just casual play. I also look for people that I know are friendly, who are not going to be jerks to me or anybody else in the lobby. And if they fit that description, I generally won't join. Sometimes I see people I recognize and I think, you know what, I'd just rather not deal with that today. And on that same note, if I join and people are yelling at each other, someone's being a jerk, whatever, for the most part, I'm really sick of trying to play the role of referee, and I'll usually just leave. Other than that, I don't join lobbies in other game modes except on rare occasions. If it's not an uplink lobby, I will almost never join it. And if it's a non-comp lobby, I also will mostly not join those because I am looking for a competitive experience. Hopefully that's helpful. The Kool-Aid Commander, aka Technomancer, asks, how do I get my teammates to take me seriously? He mentions here in the question that he's 14, he has a deepish voice, but still people ignore his callouts and just ignore him in general. I will say that's sort of just a feature of playing, especially in pubs, is that people will ignore you even if you have a silky smooth monotone voice. Happens to me quite frequently when I just venture out into the pub world on those rare occasions. And in pubs in particular, you should expect a certain percentage of people to not be interested in being a good teammate, period. There are a lot of people that are just there to play and just live in their own head, and no matter what you say, they're not going to listen to you, so you shouldn't take that personally. My advice here is keep doing your callouts regardless. I do that even if I never hear anything back from anybody in a round. I will keep giving my callouts because I don't want to get out of that habit. And I think that's a good idea for anybody who is trying to be a good competitive player, is no matter what your other teammates are doing in terms of communication, you should be exercising good communication, as frustrating as that may be. Keyman Rain asks, how do I tell my wife I want to spend less time with her and more time on VR? Well, Keyman, I would say don't tell her that, unless you're interested in getting divorced. Stubbs asks for a comparison between virtual stock, gun stock, no stock, and bipod. A little bit of elimination here up front. I've tried the virtual stock a couple of times, and it's never worked for me. For me, it's just an awkward experience, so I never use it. Wouldn't even consider using it. Gun stock, I've never used one in Onward. I used one playing Contractors a long time ago, but it was a terrible, cheap stock. I still have it laying around here somewhere, but I will never use it. So I can't really speak about that. I'm still waiting on my stock from James because the postal service right now is just not operating very well, as we'll say. And then the bipod, I think I used it a few times when I first started playing Onward, but this comes up quite a bit, so I just want to clarify here. Bipods are, in my opinion, pretty much worthless because the idea is you get perfect accuracy almost with bipods because of the stability they bring. But in Onward, what will help you more than that is mobility. And that's what you sacrifice with a bipod, is you're forcing yourself to stay in one spot just so you can get that stability, Whereas it's generally a better strategy to maintain your mobility and sacrifice a little bit of accuracy, which is why I always tell people just bring a foregrip. Funnily enough, I've had some people tell me that you shouldn't use a foregrip either because it doesn't help with the accuracy. Someone actually said that to me yesterday, which is just objectively not true. So bring a foregrip. I know some of you snipers, especially on the newer teams, like the bipods, and I guess if you're finding success with that, then do it, but more often than not, you're going to find it's just not a good idea to take one. And then finally, no stock is the way I've always played. And for me, I don't really know any other way, so it's a bit of an uneducated opinion. It's not very varied. I would just say, in my experience, it tends to be the best way to do things, just because I have so much flexibility. I can snap really quickly onto shots, and I can transition to grenades very, very fast. And in tight spaces, I have no problems. And it's my understanding that with the stock, you run into issues like that. So, I don't know. I mean, maybe the stock is the better way to go. Maybe after I get mine, sometime between now and my death, I'll start thinking that stocks are the way to go. I just don't know. At this point, I'm an uneducated caveman. So, I will stick with no stock for the moment. Uncle Mute asks, what's it like to be a celebrity? I have no idea. You should ask somebody who is actually a celebrity. I'm just a random guy on YouTube. Hecklack asks, what are the characteristics of an opposing team that you would be most terrified of? I wouldn't use the term terrified for how I feel before any Onward match. Just as somebody with a background in competing in things like jiu-jitsu, it's a little hard for me to feel that kind of primal fear since I've competed in situations where the other person is actively trying to hurt me in a physical way. In fact, that's the whole goal. So I don't really feel emotions like that. I've certainly felt nerves before, especially before casted matches against a tough team. So let's just go down that path. So what makes me a little nervous about playing a team? The big one for me is just discipline. If I've seen them play and I know that they're disciplined and they will grit their teeth no matter what happens and still try to win, that's really the hardest thing to deal with. It's those teams that are overly aggressive, that are volatile emotionally. Those are the ones that are easy to deal with. I think in most cases people get, sort of intimidated by the more aggressive players, but truth be told, those people fold more often than not. The ones you need to worry about are the ones where you've got them down 3-1 on the deciding map, and they still have decided that this match is not over. And as a team, they have decided this is not over. And they will continue to fight and take it to like 3-3 out of nowhere. Those are the teams you have to worry about. So again, I don't feel terror facing those teams. It's just the wrong context to elicit that kind of emotion for me, at least. But when I'm facing off against a really good team, I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to have to stay focused this entire time because I cannot expect them to get tilted when things don't go their way. That's what I worry about. Kool-Aid Commander, aka Technomancer, asks, what are the main differences between competitive play and normal lobbies? I've talked a little bit about this, in particular in my League Matches 101 video, but the big differences mostly come from just intensity. When you're in a league match, people are just focused most of the time. I mean, there's some teams that are very loose about it and they still just kind of joke around, whatever. I personally think that's more of a coping mechanism, but that's a different conversation. Anyway, what you'll notice is that, first of all, most of the time you won't hear much from the other team because they'll be strategizing, and your team will mostly be talking about strategy as well. There's a lot less joking around, and when you're playing, you have to be a lot more careful. People are much more conservative when they're competing because they want to win. They won't take as many risks because they don't want to put the win condition on the line. So that changes everything in a competitive match. And especially when you know you only have, realistically, 2 maps to win, you really have to focus and make sure you don't blow around. Because one round can make all the difference in a game of Onward. Especially if that round, let's say you're on defense and you get capped on, that's a big deal. It can shift the whole dynamic of the game in the other team's favor. So everybody is just really locked in and thinking about how to win. Whereas when you're just playing in a normal lobby, even a comp lobby, I mean, you're playing unlimited maps, effectively, and if you play poorly in a round, or you know, your team gets 4-0'd or 5-0'd or something, it doesn't matter. So everybody, even if you lose, might just be smiling, having a good time, whatever. That just doesn't happen in competitive play. Like, when you lose a competitive match, at least as a competitive person on a competitive team, it hurts. And those moments where you can see the tide turning against you hurt. You just don't really get that kind of emotional roller coaster ride when you're playing in normal lobbies. Navaste asks, how do I deal with toxic vets that other vets will protect in lobbies because, quote, they're normally not like this? I can't tell you how many times I've seen this, and it happens in particular when there's drugs or alcohol involved. Personally, I am not a fan of the excuse of, I'm drunk, therefore I am not accountable for my actions. As an adult, I find that just to be a stupid way of looking at the world. And even if you are not drunk or high or something like that, there's no excuse to be a dickhead to people, especially new players. But there are a lot of veteran players. I shouldn't say a lot, like some. I would say most vets are not like this, but some veterans who feel like they have a license to be dickheads to people just by virtue of the fact of being in the game for a long time. Many of these people aren't even on teams anymore. Many of them have contributed exactly nothing to the league. They are just there trolling, both in the game and in Discord. You know who I'm talking about, not going to name any names. My personal attitude about this is there's not a ton you can do about it. If you're in a good lobby and someone starts doing this, those people should get kicked. I don't care what kind of reputation they have, how long they've been around. If you're a jerk to everybody else, you shouldn't be there, in my opinion. So they should get kicked. But if you're in a place where people are going to do that and not get punished, you're better off just leaving, as terrible as that sounds, because you're just fighting an uphill battle, and in some cases you might even get kicked. So until we fix this at a community level, you don't have a lot of options. Dyslexic Dazzler asks, how do you prevent a personal bad play, especially map or series deciding, from getting into your head? Not perfect about this. I am a human too. I certainly have moments like that where I get tilted, as much as I've talked about not getting tilted, not letting these things bother you. It will happen regardless. But some good practice is to just not think about it in the moment. You have to realize, especially, let's say that it's the opening round of a match and you get capped on, which has happened to me. In fact, it's the subject of my very first video if you want to dig through the archives. And at that point, you cannot crumble. You can't let your morale disappear for either yourself or your team. You just have to say, okay, that happened. We're going to review this afterwards and make sure it doesn't happen in the future, but there's nothing you can do about it right now. That is I would say, the most powerful framework you can use, is just to realize you can't change the past. And there's no reason to let that affect your future either. And I know that's easier said than done, but it's important. And there's another concept that was made famous in a book whose name I can't remember right now, but it's called non-judgmental awareness. And what that means is you're not making judgments about yourself and the things that you've done. You're not saying, oh, I'm stupid, or I suck at this game, or whatever. What you're saying is just an objective observation of what happened. So you got capped on, you say, well, I got capped on, and it's because I wasn't paying attention to this angle, I wasn't communicating with my teammates, so on and so forth, and I shouldn't do that again. And just stick with that, because the moment you start making qualitative judgments about yourself as a result of how you play, you're going to take yourself down this wormhole of really bad emotional states, and I don't recommend it. So just try to stay away from that. Again, I know it's easier said than done, and I also know that some players now are a little younger, and it's, just kind of natural for younger people to have slightly more volatile emotions. I am saying this all as an adult, and I know it's easier said than done from that perspective as well. CJ Hubs asks, what is your thought on training with bots? I am not a huge fan of training with bots. I'm not a huge fan of just sort of drill type practice with unrealistic resistance in general. The utility I can see from bots comes primarily when you are at the very early stages of learning how to play the game. I would argue this is true for pretty much any multiplayer game that has a single-player bot mode. It's not just Onward. In that you can learn just kind of the basics of the game. For example, in Onward, if you don't know how to load your weapon, for example, especially under fire or something like that, bots can help with that because it doesn't really matter if you die, it's just practice, and nobody else is affected by it. So you can just go into a single-player bot mode or maybe a co-op mode with another new person, and you guys can figure out how to use the weapons, how to move, how to communicate, that sort of thing. I just think in general the bots don't do anything even close to similar when it comes to tactics when you're comparing to humans. The bots are really stupid. They will just run like lemmings straight into your fire. When you raise the difficulty, it doesn't make them smarter, it just makes them able to hit headshots from a million miles away, seemingly instantly. So I don't really think you're gaining anything. It was funny because when I first started playing this game, I did a bunch of single player, and people would get hyped up on being able to win at the highest difficulty levels in co-op, but I never personally thought it was that impressive because, again, at the highest level of difficulty, it just means that you're playing against aimbots, basically. So yes, you might win, but more often than not, you're going to die for stupid reasons because they just snapped onto you from halfway across the map and killed you instantly. So I don't think it's a good idea. I also think the other side of it, you'll see this a lot when you start playing more PvP. It's people who come from the co-op modes. They use really bad tactics because they have adapted themselves to that environment. So in the bot modes, for example, it makes sense for everybody to just kind of cluster up and communicate verbally, and like they just do all kinds of stuff that you would never do in a PvP game because the bots are so dumb. You do things in a co-op mode that will make you just utterly exploitable in PvP. So I would argue it's more harmful than anything. Use it when you've never played a game before and you just need to figure out how to move around and control things, that sort of thing. But after you've reached that level, just stop. It's not worth it. Eclipse asks, what do you think rookie teams are most lacking in? Now, I get the feeling this is a question about tactics, like, what moves or loadouts or whatever are they not using enough. And I'll just say that to me, the thing that most rookie teams are lacking in is much less tangible than that. Tactics are easy to learn. Weapons are pretty much a solved problem at this point because they're dictated by simple math in terms of, hey, how many points is this going to cost me? How powerful are the rounds? What's the recoil like? So on and so forth. That's why you only see a small set of weapons used, at least at the higher levels of competition. So all that stuff, weapons, tactics, whatever, I mean, you'll learn that. It's not easy necessarily, but it's not the hardest part of the game. What I see most rookie teams lacking in is team cohesion, or what could be considered maturity in many cases. A lot of rookie teams, I think, kind of get carried away with scrim success, for example, and they'll go and brag about what happened in a scrim, even against a high-level team, not realizing that high-level teams lose in scrims all the time. In fact, sometimes they will do it just because they want to experiment. They'll go around talking about how they've killed somebody in casual play, like that's a big deal. And I've been planning on making a video about Onward ethics. I've been getting a lot of questions about this sort of thing, so maybe I'll save a fuller explanation for later. But I will say something I'm seeing a lot is around that whole topic, where rookie teams are just, for lack of a better term, being jerks. You should not brag about what happens in a scrim. Scrims don't matter. Scrims are practice. You should not brag about who you've killed in a casual lobby. Like, I saw somebody, I'm not going to name any names, but they were talking in the Onward Discord about having killed a popular Onward player several times in casual play, like that's an accomplishment. It doesn't really matter. Like, I understand, I've been there too. I remember what it was like the first time I killed somebody on the best team in the world or whatever, and I thought I was pretty cool. The truth is, none of that matters. I mean, it's a team game, first of all, and what should matter more than anything is whether your team is winning. And second of all, in casual play, people do lazy, stupid stuff all the time, and I include myself in that. Like, if you kill me in a casual lobby, great. I mean, join the club. I think pretty much everybody in Onward has killed me at this point. And every single high-level player could say the same thing. It's just the nature of the game. You're going to die a lot. It's pretty unusual to have 0 deaths for anybody in a round. It does happen sometimes, but it's unusual. So rookie teams, I think, don't understand that in many cases. And they are looking for something to latch onto so they can feel good and kind of get the team self-esteem boosted, which I get. But you really need to keep that in check, because if you do that too much, people will start to take notice in a bad way. Your reputation will get wrecked if you start doing that too much. So I'd say, first of all, for rookie teams, just check your egos a bit. It's fine to have a bit of an ego. Everybody should have some ego. That's what makes us all compete and want to get better and win, so on and so forth. Just be a little more humble about your level of experience, I would say. And then on top of that, a slightly more concrete subject is just rookie teams tend to be lacking in team cohesion. And that's just something that comes with time and skill play. Like, if you are doing it right and you're learning consistently and you and your teammates all care about the same goals, that will develop naturally, but it takes a long time. And I think one thing, this is related to the maturity part too, that frustrates people is it can take multiple seasons for that to develop. And a lot of people, once they realize that, get really, really discouraged. So I would just say, don't get discouraged about that. It's normal. Be ready for the climb to the top to take a long time. And if you can internalize that and you and your teammates can, really understand that and click over long periods of time, everything else will take care of itself. The tactics and all that, you'll learn that no problem. But that is the hardest part, is just operating as a team. Okay, well, that is easily my longest Q&A video. So hopefully this was what you were all looking for. I know I made you wait for a while. Apologies for that. Again, just got really busy in my non-Onward life. And I don't know when the next one's going to come out. I have another video in the works. It's more about a competitive concept that I'm still not done with. So please bear with me. And in the meantime, if you want to come shoot me in Onward or something, then come join the Kool-Aid crew in my Discord. You can go to invite.gg/ThetaVR to do that. So hopefully I'll see you in there, and if not, I'll just see you in the next video. Okay, this is Theta, signing off.